Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1, or should I say, Stop and Go F3, because we are here to talk about the British Formula 3 race. And I can say, right now, before we get into anything at all, that feature race is the greatest Formula 3 race of all time. My God, it was mental. We'll get into all of that and more. Firstly, have to say like and subscribe. Secondly, big thank you to our members, Dakota and the Joyous James. If you want to become a member, there's a link in the description. But let's get into the sprint first before we head into the feature. Now, the sprint was postponed due to rain. It was very heavy rain yesterday morning, so they decided to postpone the race until the afternoon. Now, I've got to say, before we get into this, I wasn't here when the sprint happened. I was out and about. And when I got back, I haven't been able to find the full sprint anywhere. So I've only been able to watch the highlights on YouTube. So if I have missed anything in the sprint, that's why. But don't worry, I watched all the feature, and I'll talk about that to its full extent later on. So, for the sprint, we have Noel Leon on pole with Arvid Lindblad alongside. Lindblad able to take the lead immediately off the start. Leon having a bad start, not only losing P1 but losing P2 to Zagazeta as Leon is down to P3. But then he's able to get P2 back through Beckett. There's a huge crash further down between Ollie Gerfer and Esterson. This brings out the safety car. But in a big change for the championship, Luke Browning is out after he got hit by Tim Tramnitz. There was a contact as well between Wirtz and Dunn, where I don't think Wirtz left enough room for Dunn on the straight. Gabriele Mini is fighting Solov for P6 on lap 17, and Montoya has a great move up to P8 as well on that lap. Mini squeezes Solov off the track and is able to take the place, but has to give it back. That's on the final lap, and as we cross the line in the sprint, it is Arvid Lindblad who wins. Noel Leon in P2. Zagazeta is in P3. I really want a Zagazeta. Voice in P4. Mansell P5. Solov P6. Mini in 7th. Mansell 8th. Megatune F9 and Van Hoopen in 10th. As I said, if I missed anything, it's because I haven't seen it. Let's go into the feature though, because I saw all of this. All of it. At some point in my notes here, it just got so hectic and so mad that I've just written down the positions where people are and not really what was happening. We'll get to that later on. Start of the race though. Championship leader Luke Browning on pole position. Max Esterson alongside. In terms of our other championship protagonists, we have Gabriele Mini in 11th and Arvid Lindblad. Sorry, Mini was in 14th, Lindblad in 11th. And as we're on the grid, it starts to rain, and the drivers are having to decide now, do they stay on the dry tyres that we went onto the grid onto, or do they try and change over to the wets? And the majority of the grid do make the change to the wets. The two that stay on the dries are Witsnicki and Callum Voisin. But on the formation lap, a lot of people decide that was the wrong choice to make and then move over to the wets again. That includes the likes of Lindblad, Mini, Ramos, Beganovic and Tramnitz. There are a load of cars in the pits. Only half of the grid actually starts the race on the grid. And I saw later on, there was a few notices for cars lining up in the wrong starting box, which may be a thing that comes back because, you know, when half the grid aren't there, it's going to be very difficult to decide which box is your box. So we'll have to wait and see if anyone actually gets a penalty from that. But as we start the race, Browning is able to keep the lead and is told that the rain will get harder in 7 minutes. Callum Voisin, though, is the one making some moves as he goes up the grid. The safety car comes out though, because Shields has spun further down. This is massively beneficial to those on dry tyres, though, especially those who pit on the formation lap, as this allows them to catch up to the back of the grid. But also, the guys who are on the wets, it gives them a bit of a buffer. If you want to pit, you have to pit immediately and change to those dries, but it does give you a bit of a gap if you want to go in there. So Dunn and Wirtz are the ones who take advantage there, pitting for the dries. Behind the safety car, Voisin is 4th, Witsnicki is 13th after starting 30th. These are the highest of the dry tyre runners. Arvid Lindblad was in 18th, the highest of the ones who pit on the formation lap. The safety car ends on lap 3, and immediately Lindblad was up 2 places, Witsnicki up 3, Voisin was up to 2nd place, passing Fornaroli, and before lap 3 has even ended, Callum Voisin takes the lead from Luke Browning with ease, making it look easy. At this point, the dry tyre runners are just slicing through everyone. Before the end of lap 4, Lindblad is up to 5th place. After starting the lap, 18th. Gabriele Mini is following him through. He's up to 11th at this point. DRS is enabled, and then we have a huge crash between Bogdanovic and Flörsch. Meanwhile, Tim Tramnitz on the slicks is able to pass Browning as well. He's up to P2. This brings out the safety car. All that was in a lap and a half. Tramnitz now pits from P2 under the safety car to move back to the wets because he feels the rain is falling down. In terms of the Flörsch-Bogdanovic incident, what happened there? Dunn went massively off, came back on, hit the grass, pulled a wheelie as he comes back onto the track. Flörsch notices this and tries to avoid it. Bogdanovic is right there. She taps Bogdanovic and goes off into the wall. Huge crash, Dunn's fault. And now we have, behind the safety car, the rain coming down again. And we have cars entering the pit lane to move back to the wets. It's the likes of the Ramos, Infra-Puvacak, Gerfer, Dunn, Bogdanovic. At this point, I'm thinking, realistically, who has advantage here? And I don't know. At this point, I wrote down that the ones who had the advantage were Gerfer and Bogdanovic, and they were 24th and 25th in this race. Behind the safety car, before it restarts, we have Voisin in first on dries, Browning in second on wets, Lindblad in third on dries, Fornaroli in fourth on wets, Smith in fifth on dries, Witsnicki in sixth on dries, and Mini in seventh on dries. Then we get a penalty for Voisin, who's leading the race. A 10-second penalty for him for leaving the track and gaining an advantage for his overtake. I believe it was on, I don't know, Esterson. He overtook Esterson at the start of the race. Personally, I feel Esterson pushed him off the track. It wasn't that Voisin went off the track to gain an advantage. That's where he went. But he did overtake off the track. So I think it's a 50-50 one, but I understand why he got the penalty. Meanwhile, Wirtz's pit, there's a safety car ending now on lap 8 as we decide to go racing once again. And it is immediate that the cars on the wet tyres are now the ones with the advantage, as Voisin is immediately under pressure from Browning, who retakes the lead. Witsnicki and Mini are falling down the order. Voisin now down to 4th, Lindblad down to 8th, Mini was 27th, and not long after, Lindblad was 20th, Voisin 19th. Now there's another huge crash between Dunn and Montoya. Montoya's car is now blocking the pit lane, and they close the pit lane, and the safety car comes out. So those who are on the dries, who are thinking of going to the wets, they can't. The pit lane is closed. It's mad. So what happened here is Montoya and Dunn did absolutely nothing wrong, and they're the ones out of the race. We'll explain it now. So it was Stuka who pushed Dufek out wide. Dufek goes on the curb, on the wet, slides out the back. His car comes across the track. He collects Montoya. Dunn then tries, I think he might have collected Dunn. Then Montoya tries to move and avoid this, but then gets caught up on the wet grass and just goes into the wall himself. Montoya and Dunn, who did nothing wrong, are the two who are out of the race. And now, behind the safety car again, we have Browning leading from Fornaroli, from Esterson, from Leon, from Megatunif. That's your top 5 on the dries. The 3 highest drivers on the those 5 are on the wets. The 3 highest on the dries are Voisin, who about 2 laps ago was leading the race. He's now 21st. Lindblad is 22nd. Gabriele Mini is 23rd. And it's advantage to the wet weather tyres, but those can't pit because the pit lane is closed. Then, on lap 11, the rain stops again. So now we're thinking the track is drying. It's not dry, but the track will be drying. Halfway through this race, Do we have enough wet track to keep the advantage for those wet weather drivers, or can the dries come through once again? And at this point, at the halfway point in the race turns to a timed race. So we're running out of time. There's only, I think, is it half an hour? I'm not even sure how much it is, but there's only a certain length of time that a F3 race can go on for, and we're reaching the time limit. We're not going to be able to complete the 22 laps. So 15 minutes to go. And then the safety car is coming in. They reopen the pit lane. 13 minutes to go in this race. Ollie Gerfer pits. So Ollie Gerfer, who was one of the guys who pit for the wet tyres a few laps ago, has now come in to pit for the dries. Now, initially, I had him as having the advantage because I thought those guys who had been on the wets from the start, i.e. Your Luke Browning, when it was dry, that would have just cooked his wet weather tyres. So even though it was raining again, I didn't think he would have the advantage over the likes of someone like Gerfer, but Gerfer thinks the new wet tyres aren't as much an advantage as dry tyres would be, so he pits once more. There is contact further down with Megatunif, Loke and Leon. All of them have damage, but they're not out. Tramnitz passes Loke for P6. Tramnitz then passes Megatunif for P5. Leon passes Etterson for P3. Tramnitz passes Megatunif for P5. DRS is enabled. The FIA decide that the track is now dry enough for DRS to be enabled, and almost as immediately as it is, Voisin, Lindblad and Mini start to make some moves, moving up through the grid. The advantage has gone back to the dry tyres once again in this race where it's been wet, it's been dry, it's been wet, it's been dry, it's been wet, it's dry again! It's unbelievable! Fornaroli is battling with Leon for P2. Leon's able to get up past him. Meanwhile, further down the grid, the dry tyre movers are cutting through. Voisin is 14th, Lindblad is 15th, Mini in 18th. Advantage to the dry tyres. Then I've just written down here where they are. Voisin in the same lap, 10th, 7th, Lindblad 9th, Mini 13th. The slick tyres now are lapping a whole second quicker than Browning is in the lead. Voisin is 6th, Voisin is 5th. You have Lindblad in... Where's Lindblad? He's 5th. Voisin's 4th. Mini 7th. Voisin's 2nd. Mini 6th. Lindblad 4th. Mini 5th. Lindblad 3rd. Mini 4th. Voisin retakes the lead of the race again from Luke Browning. Then Browning falls behind Lindblad. Browning falls behind Mini. We have Voisin leading the race from Lindblad, from Mini, where a couple laps ago they were what? 21st? 21st, 22nd, 23rd. That's the advantage they have now. And at this point, you have these three wet weather tyres, but they're all now battling each other. Lindblad is chasing down Voisin. Mini is chasing down Lindblad. But we have to remember that Voisin has got that 10-second penalty, but it doesn't matter in terms of the podium because Browning has now fallen 10 seconds behind Gabriele Mini. So as long as there's no safety car or incident or change in the weather, Voisin is guaranteed a podium. But Browning is now falling back. He's been on those wet weather tyres since the start of the race. Tommy Smith was able to get up past him for P4, 2.5 minutes left. Witsnicki gets past Browning. Witsnicki, who's been on the dry tyres since the start. Lindblad goes off the track, but is able to keep the position. That might be looked into later on. Gerfer gets past Browning. Browning down to P7. Fornaroli gets past Browning. Browning down to P8. And as we cross the line, it's Voisin who crosses the line first, but he does not win the race because of the penalty. Lindblad wins, becomes the first ever driver to do the double at a Formula One race weekend. Incredible from Arvid Lindblad. Fantastic stuff. Gabriele Mini has to settle for P2, but is the new championship leader. Callum Voisin is in third place. A fantastic podium, but heartbreak for him. His team didn't tell him he had a penalty. He thought he won the race. He comes over the radio celebrating that he's just won the British Grand Prix in the Formula 3, a British driver, and then his team tells him, oh, by the way, you got a penalty, you're third. We're going to try and appeal it, but you are third. Heartbreak for him. It's awful to hear. I can't believe they hadn't told him before this. Every second has drama in this race. It's madness. Smith is 4th. Witsnicki is 5th. Gerfer is 6th. Fornaroli is 7th. Luke Browning finishes 8th. For the championship leader at the start of the weekend, he's now down to 3rd in the championship. Bedrin is 9th. Noel Leon in 10th. My God, what a race that was. Absolutely incredible. One of the best races I've ever seen. Not just in Formula 3, but Formula 2, Formula 1, IndyCar, whatever it might be. That was incredible. Amazing driving all around from everyone. Not just your top 3, but everybody. Like even Luke Browning. I know he finished 8th in the end, but he led that race for so long, through so many changeable conditions, never once changing tyres. So incredible job from him, despite finishing 8th. Fantastic stuff. Of course, the hero of Formula 3 has to go to Arvid Lindblad, the first ever driver to do the F3 double, and that is home race no less. Arvid Lindblad has been incredibly impressive this year as a rookie in Formula 3. What's this, his 4th win? It might be. I have to double check that, but I think it's around there. He has been incredible. And definitely someone that we will see in Formula 2 next year. He might even win the championship in Formula 3 this year. I would not be surprised if we see him in Formula 1 sooner rather than later. Because the fact of the matter is this. When you look at the Red Bull Juniors that Red Bull have right now, is there many better than Arvid Lindblad? I mean, there's Pepe Marti, who is very good. Very good. But is there any better than Lindblad? I don't know. That boy there could be the future of Red Bull racing in Formula 1. You heard it here first. There you go. I'm going to catch my breath because we have got Formula 2 coming up in about 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes actually, as I'm recording this. So I'll be here to talk all things Formula 2 in about half an hour to an hour on the channel. So make sure you subscribe for that. Until then, though, have a good one. I'll see you then. Goodbye.